without further ado, our special guest tonight is Boston College history professor Heather Cox Richardson, author of many books, including Democracy Awakening, Notes on the State of America, and the popular Substack newsletter, Letters from an American. Please join us in welcoming historian Heather Cox Richardson to the stage.
What's great is that she's been doing this so long after this book, and she's been doing speaking tours. She just kind of sits up here and goes, "Yo,
what's up?" Can you show everyone your book and how you've...
Well, I'm a history guy, and this is right up my alley. And so I took great liberties with this book because it's amazing. And we should have scrapped the whole show and just talked to Heather.
I feel like there are two different kinds of people with books. There are those of us who like to keep them pretty, which is me.
So I have the dust cover.
Kai.
I have the dust cover back at home, but just for the record. Also, I figured she wouldn't mind if I wrote in her book. You probably write in books.
How do you feel about people writing in your
I
book?
don't write in books. I don't dog ear books, but I don't have any objection to other people. Books should be lived with.
Sorry.
Books should be lived with. No,
Hey, listen.
Yes, ma'am.
Mail-in ballots. That's why you can't have a decision the night of. And a number of states, including Pennsylvania, have laws that you can't even open.
I know. That's a new law in Pennsylvania.
That's right.
Yeah.
But if you're overseas or if you're in the military, you got to have your ballot counted.
Okay. But so look, about which two things? In principle, shouldn't we be able to know?
Well, yes, in principle,
Okay,
but a
all
lot
right.
of people have the vested
Okay.
interest in us not knowing, and that's
Totally, and we'll get there. This is a little sideways, but whatever. How do you feel about early voting in person as opposed to?
Yay, audio.
There we go.
Thank you.
God bless producers.
As-
Can we give a round of applause for all of our producers and
totally.
engineers who make us sound good despite our best efforts?
So the early voting window versus, and I grant you there are infrastructure challenges with this, but the community experience of all of us going to the polls on election day.
So I'm going to be radical over here and say not only should we have early voting, but we should have a holiday on election.
Oh, totally agree.
For sure.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking, millions and millions and millions of people. So you got to have a lot of ways for different people to be able to vote. Yeah, and I do like the sense you've got going on now. It's kind of a party, and people are turning out to vote as a group and standing in line, and yeah, I like the vibe we got going on this year.
Mm-hmm.
Who were we talking to that they were talking about showing up to the polling place wearing costumes and like celebrating?
Oh yeah, I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay, that might be a little bit much at 7:00 in the morning. Oh my God, it's a
But
chicken.
that's just it. If there's early voting, you don't have to go at 7. You can go at 3, 4, 5 o'clock, have a cocktail afterwards, and make it a day. But also, we were just talking about this on Decoding Democracy about people who have disabilities and mobility issues. It can be really hard to get out to a polling place on election day when there's a ton of people out, or if you are somebody who has a difficult schedule. All of these things can make it really challenging to vote in this finite window of time. But we could spend the whole time talking about this.
Do you disagree, Kai?
No, I look, Kimberly raises, as she always does, really good points. I just value, perhaps it's false romanticism, the idea of voting and deciding our fate collectively as a community exercise. And maybe it's because I grew up in a small town in New York where we used to go and have community meetings and select the town alderman, and the school budget was voted on literally in the middle school auditorium, Maybe those days are gone, and I get that. But so I've got a whole speech I give sometimes on part of what's affected this country is the lack of shared experiences. Mm-hmm. And my particular take on it, I'm a veteran, and my particular take on it is lack of a shared ethos of national service. Mm-hmm. But a very small part of a shared national experience is coming together to choose collectively who we want to lead us. And the more I say it out loud now, it sounds more falsely romantic, but it does sort of linger in my mind as a thing that we might aspire to, provided, of course, we can accommodate those who need and those who can't do it conventionally.
And that's the thing, right? Like, what do we value more? The shared experience or expanded access?
Right. No, I agree. I
But
totally.
could you two split the baby and simply have the watch night parties 2 nights after the election? You know?
I don't know.
Because
You
I get
lose
your
some of
point.
the
Yeah.
energy.
Or just have a 48-hour party. You know,
Because
there's that.
because a lot of it
Look,
really
I have a
is,
14-hour party once a year, so
Yeah.
I'm down for it.
but a lot of it is driven by the media that wants to have what is it, the needle or something, and you're like, oh
Well,
please, no, don't move that needle.
who's got nightmares about the 2016 New York Times needle? Oh, come on. Way more of you do than just 3 people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
And
Yeah,
they
anyway.
come out and they say, oh, look, so-and-so has
Yeah.
97% of the
Yeah.
vote. And you're like, and then you look and there's been 316 votes. It's like, really?
Right.
Like,
So-
I could clean my whole house before we get to a number that matters
I
here.
really want to get your thoughts on this whole endorsement thing that we were talking about earlier, and the Washington Post and the LA Times choosing not to make an endorsement.
So there are 2 questions that you asked. You talked about the media, and you're talking more about the endorsements themselves. And as we all know, the endorsements aren't going to move any votes, right? So the real question is, what is the media's role in this moment? And why didn't the LA Times and the Washington Post make endorsements? Which to me, of the 2, is the more immediate and the more interesting question, because I would argue in this moment, and this, I'll go back to the media, but I would argue in this moment that it is worth thinking about why they didn't endorse anybody. And I would suggest that it probably has a lot to do with the fact that Donald Trump's brain is tapioca at this point. And what I'm saying is that if you are somebody who's going to have business in front of the
Right.
U.S. government, you don't really care about Donald Trump right now. You care about whoever's going to take over the Republican Party. And you don't know who's going to take over the Republican Party. So there's this battle going on now, I think, between the different factions that could get control of the Republican Party. And if you are somebody like Bezos, you don't want to piss anybody off. Or if you are somebody like Musk, you want Trump's people in there, so you get your Chinese tariffs to protect your electric vehicles. So when I saw those, my first reaction was not about the media, although that's a different question. It was, oh boy, there is a huge fight going on about who's going to inherit the Republican Party. All right, which I'm happy to talk about, but the media question is the more important one here at this moment, I think. You
yeah.
look
So
like you
answer
disagree.
that one, and then I've got a question about the Republican Party. But go ahead.
Okay, so we are the problems you identified with the media are true. The jobs that these guys do is so difficult. You guys do a great job. The people who are out there getting information to all of us are heroes. They really are. It's a really hard job, and I
Thanks.
try never to criticize
It's
the
not
media.
us.
But and there are a lot of great writers, by the way, at the LA Times and the Washington Post and all the other places that y'all canceled your subscriptions to, who really are doing their jobs, and they're worth supporting. But one of the things that I think is really interesting in this moment that we don't talk a lot about is, you just said we have no shared experiences in this country, and yet here we are. We have a live stream going wherever that went. You're going to be heard by hundreds of thousands of people all over the country with this particular shared experience. And one of the things about this moment is there is certainly the legacy media, which in many ways has dropped some balls. But I think one of the reasons we have the political movement going on that I identify in this moment is because there are so many people who have gone to a different form of media that is much more bottom up.
Yeah.
So you knew to criticize some of these endorsements because Oliver Darcy got the story first, right? In his, I think it was in his Substack.
Yeah.
And you want to know about how the law is going with regard to some of the cases that are out there. You turn to one of the 5 or 6 really fabulous legal writers that are writing on their own hook. And so I look at what the Post and the Times did as a political story, but I also look at the media story as being one in which the model that you were talking about is collapsing. Mm-hmm. And what's coming up instead are all these independent people who are doing crackerjack work and have millions of followers. Brian Tyler Cohen's YouTube channel has more than 3 million followers, and I think he does it out of his dining room, and it's really, really good. And I suspect that what we're going to see, you're his mom, right? And kidding, she's not. I think what we're going to see, I think what we're watching is we're watching the media change. And this has happened really dramatically a number of times in our history. The whole way we got papers like the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune were because they recognized there was a hole in what at the time was modern media that was not articulating a new political moment. And so they were created. The Times in 51, the Chicago Tribune in, I think it was about 56. 18.
18, yeah, I was just going to say. That's...
And you saw the same thing in the late 19th century when you got the rise of all these new popular papers and the mugwumps and so on. So I think we're seeing a media change, and it's just part of a larger ecosystem.
Can I ask you a question about this national moment, actually, and getting back to the Republican Party and well, it's not like you ever take it off, your historian hat on. We are in a moment of national spasm. And
I've never heard it called quite that, but okay.
Right? I mean, it is.
Transition.
No.
New era.
No. And the most recent example I can think of on a similar scale is McCarthyism. And what I want to know from you with a lens on history is, one cannot know, obviously, what's going to happen in this election, but how long does it take for a national moment like this to pass? No, this is a serious question.
When is it going to be?
When will we have gotten it out of our system?
Never. That reactionary strand in American history has always been part of us. There's really two ways to think about American history anyway, and maybe world history, and that is that there are some people who believe that we are all created equal and have a right to be treated equally before the law and to have a say in our government. And there are some people who think that a few people are better than everybody else and have the right and maybe the duty to rule us all. And both of those strands are deep in American history. All we can do is to try and put those reactionaries into a place where they cannot command power over the rest of us. And I don't think that will ever go away, at least in America, but I do think we can put it in such a place where it can't command us. And I think you're asking a more limited question, and that is my opinion about how long this moment will take to pass. American history turns on a dime. I mean, it can last forever. You look at the imposition of one-party state and the kind of hierarchical system I'm going to use instead of other words I could be using in this moment. Oh, I don't know, let's use them. Fascism. In the American South from about 1874 to 1965. That took a really long time, right? But then on the same token, in the 1920s, 1928, Herbert Hoover wins the election in a landslide and says, we're done. We've almost gotten rid of poverty, and we're going to be rid of it very soon in the future, and nobody's ever going to vote for a Democrat again. Yeah. And within a year, that's all in the toilet, and FDR wins in a landslide and changed the entire country. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You talk a lot in your book and in your newsletters about sort of the myths that we have around our political narratives, this, what you say is a myth about Republicans being better for the economy. But, just listening to our conversation just now and Kai talking about the shared experience and how we don't have shared experiences in the same way that we used to. I think about a lot of myths that come around the narrative of shared experiences in the United States. We talk about sort of the shared experiences of how we used to experience media when, for so much of American history, media was controlled by white men from the East Coast, highly educated, who were the only voices and the only narratives that we heard in media. So did we ever actually have shared experiences, or did we just have certain experiences that were portrayed as shared experiences of America?
So it's a great observation, and I do think that there are times that are shared experiences, usually when you're lined up against someone, like in World War II, for example, although the individual experiences of that war were very different, of course. But I just got to throw in here, many people don't know that we actually had a very large and very vibrant Black newspaper community in the late 19th century. Hundreds of Black newspapers across this country, and they were sharing information with white newspapers. That's gone, but there was a moment there in the late 19th century when people really were trying to figure out what America was, and there were a lot of voices, including indigenous newspapers as well, by the way. So the one thing that I would say about shared experiences is that they are characterized by everybody coming together to fight something. And one of the things in this moment that I think is so interesting is how that appears to be happening right now. And one of the things that jumps out to me is, if you looked at Taylor Swift's Eras tour, that really...
Not at all where I thought you were going to go with that.
Well, but that was really interesting because I don't know how many people saw her. I did not. But it was multi-generational. How many things in this country are multi-generational and related to pop culture? And, of course, a hallmark of that were the friendship bracelets.
I don't know this. Can you explain more?
Yeah, they were the friendship bracelets. You wore them. I don't have mine on. People have been giving them to me all across the country. They're beads that say things.
Okay.
And,
I know what a friendship bracelet is. I just don't know the relation to Taylor Swift.
So that has been picked up by the
Swifties?
No, the Swifties concept has been picked up by the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz campaign. So that popular, multi-generational, female-centered support for a particular cultural moment has been transferred into politics. And that looks to me very much like the times we had the rise of new politics in America. And I think if you look at the musicians that are turning out for the Harris-Walz campaign, if you look at the different artists that are turning out, you are seeing not only a shared experience that contrasts pretty dramatically with the people who are turning out to support the other candidate, you are also seeing what looks to be this a new kind of approach to a shared moment. Different ages, different genders, different races, different ethnicities, different religions. It's really interesting.
Total change of gears. We talked about this a little bit in the reception beforehand. The Electoral College. What are we supposed to do with that? And is it time to actually launch a movement to get rid of it?
Oh yeah. I mean, there have been movements before, but so my complaint about there's a lot of complaints about the Electoral College, but my complaint about the Electoral College is freaking Thomas Jefferson,
Freaking.
It was
that and Taylor Swift in the same show, ladies and gentlemen.
It was never supposed to be winner take all. Thomas Jefferson realized in 1800 that he would have won in 1896 if Virginia had gone winner take all. So he talks to the Virginia legislature. James Monroe, by the way, is the governor of Virginia right then. Anyway, they
wait. What? What? What does that mean?
Like, come on,
All right. Sorry. Never mind. Go ahead.
They just so rigged it, and we're still suffering from it. So he got Virginia to do winner take all, so that he was elected in 1800. Every other state said, "Crap! If they're going to do it, we better do it too." Massachusetts is one of the next in line. They go winner take all. We get this winner take all system that completely perverts everything because no longer do you have to compete in all the states. And James Madison goes, "Oh my God, we can't do this." So he says we got to amend the Constitution in 1823. Then there's a crisis in 1824, so it doesn't happen. But then in addition to that problem, we get the capping of the House of Representatives in 1929, which is a real blow to the larger states so that they're underrepresented. And we could fix any one of those things without taking on we need to get rid of the Electoral College. But we do need to get rid of the Electoral College.
I want to take some questions from the audience, and just remember, y'all can go to slido.com, enter the code podcast to enter your own questions.
Can I ask a question of you two?
Sure.
Totally.
So, I'm always talking about how the Republicans have this myth that they are good with the economy.
Stop.
Yeah, I mean, like, Walk me through that one.
Ooh.
And how do
what
we
is
combat
better
that?
for the economy? What does that mean? Better for who in the economy?
Oh, do you think that's it?
Yeah. Better for donors? Sure. Better for the people who pull the political levers in power and in politics. Better for the people who often own businesses and who are the most active in lobbying. A lot of like trade associations, things like doctors, lawyers, things like that. They actively write policies that are better for those people and their personal economies. If you're poor, maybe not. But the economy for whom?
Stock market, tax breaks. It's, I mean, you know,
So
why.
it really
GDP, though. GDP, growth, that's lower under Republicans.
Do you think that that is an accurate measure of how well the economy is doing?
Look,
Well, this is your
no,
field.
but here's the bottom line, right? And I say this on the program all the time. Economic headlines are all well and good, but they don't matter unless you're feeling it in your day to day. So the GDP right now is 3 plus or minus %, according to the Atlanta Fed, right? But if you are trying to work, if you have to work 3 jobs in Ottumwa, Iowa, right? If groceries now still, even though wages have increased faster than inflation in the last 18 months, if groceries still cost you twice as much as they did 4 years ago, then the economy sucks.
If childcare is unaffordable.
Do you think this is why the media did not cover this economy as being powerful? Because the people who, we know that the people who did not do well in the Biden-Harris economy were those very people you're talking about who were at the top of the economic scale.
So I will speak as the media here, as a reporter who was actively out covering this story. I did a whole series from Marketplace on economic beliefs versus reality and why the top line data was showing that the economy was doing well while people felt like shit about it. And it was because they were experiencing it poorly. And they felt like, and I talked to dozens and dozens of people, probably hundreds by the time the series was over, about the economy. They felt like we were gaslighting them when we told them that the economy was doing well because they still couldn't afford childcare. They still saw their home insurance premiums going up so much that housing became unaffordable. They still felt there's like, and I'm sure you know about this, there's research showing that when people see inflation and costs going up for their regular goods and services, they blame the government and the economy, but when their wages go up, they think they did a good job, as opposed to like broader economic trends, which like, look, I'm guilty of that too. I'm like, yeah, I'm such a great journalist. That's why I got a raise, as opposed to, there's competitiveness in the market or whatever. And so I do think it became very hard for journalists to say, oh, it's a great economy, whenever you would go out in the street and talk to people, what they were feeling was something different. And we already have such a crisis of relevance with like regular folk. And this idea of like the media elite being so out of touch with reality. So if we go on national radio and Kai's show has a bigger audience than the Wall Street Journal, than any other business and economic show, if he goes on national radio and says everything's great in the economy, people are going to think not just that he's out of touch, they're going to think he's wrong, right? And that further undermines trust, which is all we have to go on. So
I have nothing to add.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
I do rants occasionally too. All right, I do want to get to some audience questions. All right, so I know Kai and I both have strong feelings about this. Are polls worth paying attention to?
Nope. Next question.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give you the history of polling if you want.
Yes,
But it's,
we love history.
well, it just, the real political polls that we have now come out of World War II with a focus on statistics and on math and the idea that you can put together your numbers in such a way that it can give you really good snapshots of the way people are thinking. But, that all goes to hell in a handbasket in 1948 with the Dewey-Truman election. And what we ended up with by 1960 was this idea that that political campaigns should go on forever, and that the campaigns would adjust according to the polls. And, that you can sort of see that going out through the Carter administration in the 70s when he was, people made fun of him for focusing so much on polls. But where we are now is back to your disinformation, where people are flooding the polls with disinformation to convince people to lose heart in this election and not to show up. In this, we know that the right-wing pollsters are flooding the polls. Okay. And the Democrats are not doing that. And if you get confused and concerned, there is somebody I follow, Tom Bonnier, who deconstructs what is in the polls and says, well, let's take a look at their sampling. Oh, look, and I'm making these numbers up.
I should say that he works with Target Smart, which is a Democratic-leaning organization, but I've found his data to be quite good as well.
Right. You notice the other person like that I didn't mention for that reason.
Yes.
But he will say, look, they've got 95% of women from 18 to 35 voting for a Republican. We don't think that looks right, which I find really helpful.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about Abraham Lincoln for a second?
Sure. He's my man.
I know.
So much.
I know. I saw that in the book. I spent part of the weekend last weekend in Sonoma County at the Santa Rosa Symphony.
Did you have any wine?
No, I was working actually. A buddy of mine runs a symphony.
You guys are working tonight.
It's a whole different thing. A buddy of mine runs the Santa Rosa Symphony, and they did Lincoln Portrait, and I was the narrator. And if you haven't ever heard Lincoln Portrait, you should. Aaron Copland, 1942, great piece of music. And you quote one of the, so it's Aaron Copland, it's a 15-minute orchestral suite. First 8 or so minutes is Copland's music, and then the music comes under a narrator with 5 or 6 stanzas of Lincoln's writings and speeches. And you quote one of them in the book, the one about the eternal struggle between two choices, right and wrong, throughout the world, from the Lincoln-Douglas debate in 1858. The one I think is more relevant, though, is the first one in that symphony, which is his 1862 message to Congress, in which he says, we of this Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance will save one or another of us. And then here's the nut graph. The fiery trial through which we pass, which of course in 1862 was a civil war, but today is 2024. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. And I guess my question is, why don't people recognize that they're on the wrong side of history?
I think it goes back to how you define the economy, but how you define what is the right side of history. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to, can we swear on the show?
Yes, we can.
Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to be an asshole. They wake up and they say, today I'm going to protect my children from the bad guys coming across the border. Today I'm going to make sure my child has whatever. Today I'm going to make America great again. I think it has to do with the way we conceive of our role in society. And one of the things that I think we all do is try to make sure that people's impressions of who they are and how they fit into that world are based in reality. And that's why what we do is so important. I think that keeping a record of who the good guys actually are, the Nazis are not the good guys,
Nazis are never the good guys.
Isn't it wild that we have to say that out loud?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, and yet, take somebody like J.D. Vance. He, of course, came out today, I think it was today, when he talked about how, Ukraine wasn't necessarily the good guy, and Russia wasn't necessarily the bad guy. He knows that Russia invaded Ukraine. Right, There's no doubt about that.
Sorry, so look, so the ancillary question is, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but explain to me the failure of leadership from people who know better.
And can I pause here for a moment because of what was it, last year? No, it was again, time has no meaning. I think it was 2021, 2022, we were on the show and you said, we just need these leaders in the Republican Party to come out and say out loud.
Oh, I said this?
Yes,
Oh.
you said this. That Trump
Sorry.
lost the election. We need them to stand up and say that this is wrong, that Trump lost the election, that this is all whatever. And I challenged you at the time. I said, who specifically? And you gave like a whole list of Republican leaders. And most of them have since come out and said these things.
Yeah.
And it hasn't mattered.
Said these things that he lost the election.
Yeah, that he lost the election, that, they believe in the right to a free and fair election, all these things. It hasn't mattered to the people who still believe everything that Trump says.
Nope. But it has mattered to a lot of us who care about democracy.
Yeah.
So remember
Isn't it too
this. No, it is not too late. No.
Too late for them, though.
Oh, too late for them. Well, yeah. So think about any.
Thanks for coming to our TED Talk.
Any reactionary right-wing movement has a ceiling of about 33%. And those people between 20 and 27, 33%, you are not going to change their opinions. You're just not. They have drunk the Kool-Aid.
Okay, but wait, you saw the Times poll today, 49-40 or 48-48.
Of
just said
Siena
we-
poll of likely voters, right?
We just said we weren't supposed to pay attention to
Oh,
yeah, I was going to go there,
sorry,
but
sorry.
So forget.
Well,
the
she
polls.
came with the statistics. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but that's like a
All right,
that's
okay,
political
all right,
science.
all right.
That's going to be the ceiling.
Oh, that's
So that's political science.
Okay,
That's right.
All right.
Okay, wait. I really
so-
do finish that, and then I want to get to another question.
Okay,
But-
so now I've forgotten the question. The question was why is that enough?
Right.
Not enough. Because we get the leaders we deserve. And because a lot of people were asleep at the switch for far too long, and they permitted people like Mitch McConnell to pervert our democracy almost beyond saving, almost being the operative words. And one of the things that we are seeing going on now is a whole bunch of people who didn't pay attention for a very long time waking up and saying, this is not what I was signing up for when I signed up for a democracy, and I'm going to put my all into it, and I'm going to take this country back. And I believe that we are in the process of doing so.
Well, this is very relevant to.
Round
of applause.
That's where we ought to end.
This is relevant to one of the questions that we got from the audience. Is this election moment really as big as people make it out to be, or is it American hyperbole?
No. This is it. This is, a friend of mine's in politics, and he always looks to get money, and he always says, I always tell you every election's the most important one, but this one really is. And I always counter with, every election before this could have been the most important, and we didn't take care of what we needed to take care of in those elections. But let's be really clear. Donald Trump is a fascist. He has embraced fascist ideas. He has promised to come after the people he perceives as his political enemies, including journalists, including people who are election observers, including politicians, some of whom he has named. He's talked about taking the control of the civil service into his own hands, the military, our Justice Department, and enforcing his own will. This has never happened before for a leader of an American political party to be this close to the presidency and to openly talk of overthrowing democracy, as does his running mate J.D. Vance. We have never been here before, and we must not let them win this election. That does not mean that it's over on November 10th or whenever we actually get the answers. It's going to be a while to rebuild the country. But yeah, this is it. This is the whole kettle of fish. And one of the reasons you're seeing the kinds of threats you saw today from Trump and the polls being flooded and the disinformation and Musk with his stupid little dance and his lottery and all that is because they recognize that this is it for them as well. Because if they do not get control of the United States government in this election, it will not be in their lifetimes or their grandchildren's or great-grandchildren's that they have an opportunity to get it again.
Yes, and amen. We will end, because Heather's got to get out of here, with the Make Me Smart question, which is, for those of you who listen all the time, what is something you thought you knew, but later found out you were wrong about.
Oh, this is so bad because this is, okay, this is really, they told me they were going to ask me this question, and there's so many huge things. All right, I'll be honest. I was like 57 years old when I learned that hummingbirds had feet.
Shut up.
I've never told that in public. They just like flap. I thought they like flap.
Do they like never land? Is that what you thought?
I thought they just landed in the nest.
And the nice little bird feeders, they just float like that.
Oh my God.
Minus the feet.
So it turns out they do have feet.
How did you find that out?
Well, actually, at the time I was dating my now husband, and I mentioned something about it, and he looked at me and he's like, "You don't think hummingbirds have feet?" And I was like, "Well, no, I've never seen them." And he's like, "Heather, all birds have feet."
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry. I know that was supposed to be the last question. We have to let you go. But given what you just said, what happens or what do we do if Trump wins?
Well, first of all, we don't let that happen. But if he does win, I think we continue to fight for the cause that we believe in. And we continue to keep trying every day to do the right thing. And what I mean by that is I firmly believe that just like nobody wakes up and says, today I'm going to be an asshole, nobody wakes up and says, today I'm going to be wakes up and says, today I'm going to be a hero. You wake up and you just put one foot in front of the other and you try to do the next right thing. Mm-hmm. And if enough of us wake up and do the next right thing for long enough, we turn it around.
We're done.
Professor Heather Cox Richardson, thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather.
Really appreciate you.
We'll get you out of here.
Thank you so much. Everybody, isn't she amazing? National treasure.
I don't know if you heard her, but she said I got to go right. So,
Yeah, she's got to go right.
So that all y'all have something in your mailboxes tomorrow morning. She's working pretty hard.
It's unbelievable how much she writes. She was telling us before the show that she's been doing this pretty much every day since
5 years.
2019.
2019. Yeah. If you don't subscribe, you should.
You know, we talk a lot about, kind of how you maintain your mental health and your ability to keep doing it. I have a very good friend who I've known since middle school. She's back in Missouri. We talk almost every day. And she often asks me, when I get overwhelmed by this, I just turn it off. What do you do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, cocktails? And also meditation and sleep and baths with bath bombs, all that stuff. But I can't imagine just writing
cranking it out
much and cranking it out all the time.
At a time.
But also another thing that we do to kind of function in the midst of everything is our Make Me Smiles.
So we will do that.
Because it wouldn't be a Make Me Smart episode without the Make Me Smile, right?
That's right. We will do that.
All right. What do you have, Kai?
Okay. So there was either yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a rally in Atlanta. Obama was there. Harris was there. Tyler Perry was there. And he gave an absolutely amazeballs speech, of which I will play 25 seconds right here.
You want to hear something about an American dream? Fort McPherson was once a Confederate Army base, where there were Confederate soldiers trying to plot and plan on how to keep 3.9 million Negroes enslaved. Now that land is owned by me.
If he had had a microphone, he would have dropped it. I commend that speech to your attention. It was as, this is no small praise, it was as good as anything Obama did. Truly it was. That's what I got. What do you got?
I have a story that I found on WBUR.org, which I would highly recommend everybody go to. So Kai is not on the same page as me with this, but I love Halloween.
You make me out to be like the bad guy. What?
I make you out to be the boring guy. But with love.
Ouch.
But with love. You don't like Halloween. You don't dress up. You don't do costumes.
It's
you
the
don't...
worst holiday.
It is not the worst holiday. It is one of the greatest holidays. And WBUR did a story for Radio Boston on last-minute Boston-themed Halloween costumes. I would love to hear your guesses as to what they are.
Something about the Red Sox. Sorry. Margaret, I'm sorry.
There was definitely Duncan represented in the list. Okay, I'm going to read through. Ready? Left guy at the Silhouette Lounge.
All y'all ought to be ashamed of yourself. I don't even know what's going on.
No, so this is basically a sign where there are supposed to be like two people on the sign, but one of them has fallen off. And so the one that's missing is like the idea for the Halloween costume. Okay, and this one I relate to deeply from my time living in Boston, a Storo truck.
Wow.
So, do you know about this? Okay, so there is a road in Boston called Storo Drive, and every year, without fail, college students trying to move to one of the many universities in this wonderful town do not recognize that there is not enough clearance in the overpass for their U-Haul or whatever moving trucks, and they hit the bottom of this overpass. And so someone is recommending making their costume basically a smushed up can on the top of their head.
Unbelievable.
A milk crate used to save a space. So one of my classic Boston stories is when I used to work at the State House News Service in Boston on Beacon Hill. Sometimes I had to work late. And one time there was a snowstorm and I had to work late and I took the bus home. And I run out of the State House and I see the bus driving away in this snowstorm. But I knew if I could make it across Boston Common fast enough, I could get the bus on the other side. So I'm booking it through the snow to try to catch the bus on the other side. And sure enough, it turns the corner and I'm running and I'm like banging on the side of the bus in the snow. And I fall into a snowdrift.
Oh, and you land? Oh, did you land?
And they didn't see me because I fell into the snowdrift. And so I'm lying there in a snowdrift on the side of Boston Common. And I was like, this is my life. And then there was a merciful taxi driver with chains on his tire that came by just around that time, and I was able to not have to walk home. So I relate deeply to the milk crate space saver in the snowstorm. But anyway, I love Halloween. My Halloween costume this year is probably going to be some anime character because I am me. But I'm curious, what anybody else dressing up for Halloween?
Sorry, just kidding. I will be me. That's just the way I go.
Who's dressing up for Halloween this year?
My people. My people.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so I'm the outlier. We're out. All right.
We're done. That is a
all
wrap
right.
for Make Me Smart Live in Boston. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, today's live edition of Make Me Smart was produced by the Make Me Smart crew, WBUR's event team, and the fine folks here at CitySpace, including Amy McDonald, Candace Springer, Stephen Davey, Avi Wynn, Jules Waklowick, I'm going to get that right, and Taylor Bettison.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. This was a great time. I hope you had fun.